This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration. Welcome to
How's That Working For You?
Where
We spill the tea about relationships, millennial adulting, or whatever else life decides to chuck at us.
Hey, Kat, what's up?
This is our last episode of the season.
Yeah, we're saying goodbye to an era. Not forever, but for now.
Half a year.
Yeah. So, now that we're here at the final episode, what do you think of the season so far?
I think it's gotten so much better. I think that we've really come into our dynamic on paper, or not, in this case, over the internet. Sound waves. But I think that in the beginning we were struggling hard. And I think that as the more that we do this podcast, the more natural it becomes and the easier it is to find topics that aren't as awkward to talk about. So I think that we've really come a long way. Like, what's your favorite episode, B?
My favorite episode. My favorite episode has either been the adulting one or the one about, what was it? The work-life balance one.
That one was really good. I like that a lot. And it really kind of encapsulated like a lot of what we talked about in the episodes before it too. So
what was your favorite episode so far?
You know,
since we're doing a season 2, this isn't goodbye forever.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm really glad is happening. I think that the mental health one was my first favorite, because I think that we were very candid in it, and it was a really important conversation, which I'm going to continue with my own podcast in the future, which means this one's still going to be here. But I think that one was my first favorite, but I've really enjoyed the past few ones where we've really been able to talk about ourselves in more light. The work-life balance one is also a close second, I think. And you know I love to talk about myself, so my episode. Just kidding. But I did like that one because I was able to really open up about some of the things that I've been struggling with in the projects that I've been working on. So that was like a favorite of mine for different reasons. But yeah, I think that actually probably the last 5 episodes have been 6, maybe something like that, have been really, really good. Because they've been our best work, I think.
All right, now that we've talked about our best work, what episode do you regret the most?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I really didn't enjoy listening to toxic relationships because I feel like kind of opened up the season on kind of a weird note.
Yeah, we started by talking about TV shows, then we jumped into the deep end.
Yeah, which I think that we could probably loop back around and talk about it in a better light next season.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah, which I think that because I really didn't know where I stood in terms of, because it had only been like maybe half a year since my breakup. So I think that it wasn't developed. I hadn't really come into myself yet when we were talking about that. But I also really, I don't know. What do you think about the Love is Blind episode? I don't think it was that good. While we really liked the topic, I think that we were kind of awkward in it.
Yeah, it was still early on, and neither of us quite knew or were comfortable with the online discussions. Like the only reason I think it did so well is because it was like perfect timing with what was going on in the world. And I'm hoping eventually we can be more topical next season too. But, we're now comfortable on the microphone, talking to our computers and hearing each other and all of the stuff that goes into actually making these episodes. It's not always comfortable right off the bat, and I feel like a lot of our early episodes suffered because of that. Well,
I think that, first of all, I think that I'm glad that you pushed it to happen. Because if it were up to me, I probably would have kept dragging it on, it would have been like, oh, maybe later, but you were like, no, let's do it now. So
And we made it happen.
we
We
did.
really did.
And it's become a really beautiful thing, compared to what it was. It's funny because our first episode just like we somehow messed up the audio, so
Oh
we
my
had to
God.
redo it, which I'm not saying it's the worst episode, but it definitely probably felt a little forced at that point because we had to talk about all the points that we had already talked about.
Yeah. And we have no idea how good or how bad that original recording was because we never got our hands on it.
Yeah, but that's okay. We've moved on from that, and I think that as we progress towards our like season 2, it's gonna get so much better. Like we've just gotten a lot more comfortable. Like we talk. This is basically us talking on the phone with each other. Like our everyday conversations are kind of like this, but not so in depth, I guess.
Not so topical.
Also, yeah, we also leave stuff out because obviously the world doesn't need to hear about everything.
There's a line.
There is a line for sure. But I think that, like, what do you want to talk about the conception of this? Like, what it was supposed to be? What you start?
Well, so originally, like our close friendship began when I was attempting to drag you out of a toxic relationship by your hair. And once it finally like landed, once you were like, okay, I deserve better, and you like actually moved on, it was you like went on to like rediscover yourself in terms of a relationship, and not like you were sleeping around, but you were going on, you know, different dates with different people. We're like rediscovering what that's like after being in a relationship so long, what being single was like. And so a lot of our conversations surrounded about talking about your different adventures, and it was supposed to be me giving you life advice.
Yeah, because you were in a very, very healthy and still,
Yeah.
you are in a very healthy and developed relationship, whereas I was not. I was starting from ground zero, and it was supposed to be kind of like this storytelling situation of me taking notes, mental notes, and actual notes, because I journaled about it, about just the people that I dated. And I dated some really, really weird people. And some of it was like just me trying to get past what happened to me with the big one, my big ex.
Yeah. So, moving on from that.
Yeah. It was, yeah, so that was kind of the conception of it, which was like, how's that working for you? You know? And it was also our way of making sure that we had a reason to talk to each other every week. Because I know it's like this for everybody now, because we are all social distancing, but V and I are pretty long distance in terms of like a lot of friends live close to each other. We live like hours away from each other. It's not impossible to get to her. It seems more impossible now that I don't have a car, but but it like we were kind of long distance, so it was supposed to be kind of like our weekly phone call and catching up with each other. And basically every time we caught up, it was me complaining about the people I was dating at that point, so
which I thoroughly enjoyed hearing about. But then you got into a healthy relationship, so that got scrapped, and it is what it is now. Ruined our show.
Really boring. My life got significantly more boring, and that became we had to work around it. Boring, but better. I'm gonna say that.
Yes, I like boring. It makes for a peaceful life.
It makes for a peaceful and healthy development. I have grown a lot. I've grown a lot since I left my ex. That was like the very first step. And I think that this was really good in terms of us moving on from that phase, because it probably would have been a very toxic thing for me to keep dating people anyway. Like, it probably should have moved. I actually, right before I met my ex, right before I met my current boyfriend, I almost gave up on dating altogether. At that point I was deleting all the apps. He was one of the last stragglers on Tinder that I was still talking to because I had already given him my phone number. I was just at that point, I think it was healthier for me to develop on my own. But it just happens to be weird that I think the second that I was like, all right, I'm ready to be alone, the universe was like, oh yes, she's ready to have a boyfriend.
now it's time.
Yeah, and then I ended up with like one of the most perfect people, the perfect person for me at this point, as I can see. He's perfect in a lot of ways. We still fight about very small things. But that's a relationship, isn't it?
I mean, it's concerning when you never ever fight because it's like, okay, what's actually going on?
Exactly. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I just love the person. I love him and he loves me. And that was a very foreign thing for me. I really thought that I was going to end up having to compromise for the rest of my life, and there really isn't a whole lot of compromise here. It's us working together, and that's something that you really taught me was possible.
Used to think my husband was a unicorn because he like showed basic empathy.
Oh my god, it's so sad. It's so sad. Oh my gosh, that was.
He is a little bit of a unicorn, but for other reasons.
Yeah, he's special. He's definitely elusive in terms of like me understanding him as a person, but and he's a little bit elusive to you sometimes. So.
Yeah, I think that's more of his unicornness than his basic empathy.
Yeah, but he also was raised by some pretty like very empathetic, and he was set up for success in terms of that, which is really lucky for him and for you.
Yes, I benefit a lot.
Yeah,
no lie.
Yeah, for sure. But I just, interestingly enough, it just happened right for me, and he continues to prove himself worthy of me. I'm gonna say that because I only say that because I had to really change my perspective of my own self-worth. I had to be like, they don't deserve me. Like, that was just my internal dialogue for a while. Actually, not that long, because then I met him. And I think it's really important. I think this last episode is really kind of talking about our friendship in general. Like, you really became that first thing that helped me get away from the toxicity. And you pushed me to chase things that I almost gave up on. And for a while, it became like a lull, and I almost gave up again because life got really stressful.
But you found your way back to it.
Yeah, and it's so important to have friendship like that. Like, whereas sometimes we do get into fights and stuff like that, but...
Oh, absolutely, and they're venomous.
We get into, like, pretty large fights. but they don't last that long.
No, and we always come back and own up to our own faults, and we're better people for it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like the foundation for a really healthy, solid friendship, is that when there are fights, there must be a way to do it, like just deal with it, to talk to the person and be completely honest about it, because there's no room for passive aggression in a good friendship. Like,
oh my god, and that's exhausting. Passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, I don't like friendships like that. I actually don't have a whole lot of close friends because of this. Because I've decided that I'm very careful, and because of like a lot of it is overlaps with what you taught me about my toxic relationship, is that like it's really important to choose who you let in. Mm-hmm. Which is what I'm trying to get to you about. But I digress about that. We don't have to talk about that right now. But it just became a thing. I realized that the friendship that V and I have is pretty rare, at least for me. I only have about like at least within the amount on like one hand that I can count, maybe two, that I could trust with my life the way that I trust you. Well, we would bury bodies for each other.
Yeah.
Like, who else would you do that to? Like, I think it's like my boyfriend would probably do it for me.
I don't think he'd do a good enough job. I'd want to double check that he like made sure there's no evidence, but okay.
Yeah, exactly. No, you would be much better at that. And then I have another one that her name is Sarah. I love her to death, and for some reason, like, she's also very similar to you in a lot of ways, and I think that's why we connect.
You have a type.
I do, except my boyfriend's a unicorn, because he, from what I can tell, really hasn't experienced a whole lot of trauma. Or the way that he deals with it is very, like, he's really good at compartmentalizing, which I have not very much experience with. Which I'm working on, and that's why he's good for me. Because he reminds me that it's important to compartmentalize the things that you can't deal with. You just kind of have to go through it and just like, whatever, that sucks, but we gotta move on, you know?
Yeah, figure out a way to keep going.
Yeah. So he's the while he is very similar in the ways that you support me, which is the important part, actually.
The most important part.
Exactly. He doesn't really get a lot of the emotionalness and stuff like that you get, that I talk about with you, but he's there and he tries. He really tries to understand. But you know, I'm a little crazy, so it takes a special type of person to understand me. He does a really good job at it, actually. It's been a journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, our friendship that eventually led to a podcast that's hopefully going to one day lead to something even bigger, better.
It will. I'm talking in manifestation terms because I'm that bitch. But yeah, I think it already is something huge. It's something that is huge to us. Like, in a lot of ways, it's like very indicative of our friendship together. Like, we put a lot of faith in it. So the way that we put a lot of faith in our friendship, and while it's not super developed yet, I think it's definitely on its way. Yes. For sure. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to this? We still got a few minutes left.
We still have a few minutes left. Okay. I'm really excited to see what we come up with in season 2. Keep an eye out in the early months of summer. When the weather starts getting warmer, we'll have something good for your ears.
That's it for this season. And you have because we're not talking about next season a whole lot, because that way we're leaving you on a cliffhanger. That's at least what I'm telling myself. So
keep an eye out on our Instagram to get updates of when you can expect to see season 2. And if we decide to do fun, random stuff, make sure you keep an eye on our YouTube channel, where we may or may not post random outro clips that never actually made it into the videos. And if we decide to do any other content together before then, that's where you can see that. All of our handles is how's that working for you, or you can just click on the links that you were on because you're listening somewhere. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you next season.
Drink Something, Say Something is the podcast for those of you who are tired of other beer podcasts. Tired of the jargon, tired of all the rigmarole. We're going to bring on brewers, bartenders, and everything in between to talk about anything and everything from beer to the rest of the universe. Come crack one open with us every other Thursday.